Welcome, everyone. This is Valerie Fletcher. I'm the Executive Director of the Institute for Human-Centered Design, your host for this global webcast. We are delighted to welcome you to share stories about an old friend, a respected organization, and a terrific case study project. So this is going to be our friend Sylvain Denotsan, who will be presenting. He is the chair of the Okeenea Group. He is also a leading light in France on issues of accessibility and standards for people with disabilities. This goes well beyond standards. I am very excited to share this because there's a level of detail that is hard to come by. And as I say, there will be an English language version of the guidelines generated from this that will be available by Friday. I want to also note that this is a French project, and I am a champion of some of the work that has been done in France for a long time. And I think it is often underrepresented, and people are not terribly aware of the caliber of work that's been done in France. And I want to give a shout out to another old friend and colleague, Coco Rains, a French woman who spent most of her career in the United States, but did a great deal of work in France. And Coco was really a pioneer in this work on multisensory systems, physical systems, in this case, in her case, for people who are blind and low vision. So Coco was that pioneer decades ago doing extraordinary work in France and the United States. And Sylvain has created a whole new chapter with his team that we will share with you today. Know that this session is being captioned, open captioning for this session. We will be eagerly awaiting your thoughts and questions at the end, and we will use chat to do that. So please feel free to add those anytime, but we won't actually touch them until Sylvain is finished. I want to also share with you, for you and for colleagues who might not be able to join us today live, we will have a fully accessible version of this on the IHCD website by next Friday, the 20th of December. So without further ado, I want to introduce Sylvain. Sylvain?
Hello, good evening. So I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Yeah, it's quite a good opportunity for me to share a big project that we've done and that is still ongoing. And as you can hear, I'll do my best to express myself in English. And I'm already sorry for my accent and for all the mistakes that I'm gonna do. But once said, let me share my screen. I think it's working now. So yeah, I'm here basically to talk a little bit of what we've done regarding designing multisensory wayfinding system for Paris 2024 Athletes Village. And so the story will be led under 5 chapters. We'll give you some information about the context, then about the consortium that we created to, let's say, to have this challenge worked. And then I will explain the different phases, and we will finish by a methodological legacy, which is a very important part of our job. So let's start by the context. What is it about? So I hope you enjoyed following the Olympics and Paralympics Games in Paris last summer. It was an amazing event, and I was lucky to participate to the Paralympics, some let's say sports, and it was a real huge event for France. So basically, the first organization that we had to work with was Paris 2024, in charge of the organization of the event. And because it was a long process, I think Paris has been designed as the organization city for the Olympic Games in 2017. So many public authorities created a specific company which is called Solidéo, which means this is the organization in charge of all the constructions, all the building work, all the sites to create all the locations to make the events. So that was a specific organization to manage all those huge construction work. And in the vision of the Solidéo, this organization, they had two main pillars. And one of the pillars was a strategy. And it was about voted, with the board of directors in March 2019. And this strategy has to be implemented in all their locations, all the venues that they built. And the first regarding inclusive wayfinding and accessibility. And so one of those 5 pillars regarding inclusion, I would say, was to treat the entire travel chain. And this is something that is written in the French law from 2005, which is we have to create environments from streets, transportation, and public buildings, and all this chain has to be accessible. And so we had to work from, let's say, transportation stops to the location where you have your seat in a specific location. Then it's about awareness, information, and communication, because it was obviously a huge opportunity to make the culture, to make the way that people think about disabilities, accessibility, inclusion, because we had a strong focus on Paralympic Games and on this topic. So it was a very important opportunity to, let's say, to give more conscience about this topic in the large public. The third pillar for Solidéo was to implement a universal design approach, which was, I think, quite important in the project, and that's why we participate to this project. A very important point too was the urban resilience and innovation. And the resilience means also a very strong focus on what we call the legacy. Every building work, construction was designed for the next step, after those 4 months, let's say 3 months of Olympic Games. The goal was to create spaces for the people that live in this space. And an important point was to bring a legacy, to bring methodological legacy for the build, the work that has been done. So we are going to talk about the Olympic Village, which has been implemented in the north of Paris. So it was outside the city of Paris, in the north, in an old industrial zone, a bit poor. It's more on the poor side of Paris, I would say. And the goal was to, let's say, restart from scratch and to build a kind of new city with a non-environmental excellence and a universal accessibility strategy. Just to give you some figures about the challenge. Actually, during the Olympic Games, Paris City had 3.1 million visitors, and 350,000 was visitors with disabilities. We had 40,000 athletes, including 4,000 para-athletes, and all those people were living in this specific area in the north of Paris. And in terms of size and on the topics and the goals, this is a 52 hectares zone. So it's like a small city. And the goal after for the legacy steps is to have about 6,000 inhabitants, 2,800 housings, 2 new schools, offices, industrial buildings, and to create live and with green spaces, etc. So the goal was, after the Olympic Games and after this short time for the Olympic Village, to create a new city with inclusion, with green spaces, and with a very low environmental impact. So the context on our side was that this organization published some tenders for each site and different topics. And we applied for RFP, which was innovation partnership for the design and deployment of multisensory and inclusive signage. And that's where we applied with our company, Okeenea, first. And that was part of the job. So I will explain that, because this project has two phases. The first step, 18 months of research and development to find the best solutions. To do it, we created a consortium of 8 companies to be sure that we cover a wide range of competencies. And I will give you a short brief about the different companies to give you an insight about the different expertise that we bring in the project. So we have, which was Okeenea Building, Bâtiment, which was the main contractor for the project, and we deploy every day building work, installations for big public entities or private entities. We had Okeenea Tech, which is dedicated to audio signage, which is a very old concept in France, and I will explain more about it. So it's purely dedicated to give some voice and audio information in cities. Then we have Okeenea Digital, which is a branch dedicated to digital wayfinding. Sorry for the noise. Yes. Dedicated to do inclusive wayfinding for all. Then we have Tactile Studio, which is an inclusive design agency and a workshop to create exhibits, to create solutions and tactile, audio, etc. solution, mainly in the culture area. Then we had Polygraphic, which is a designer specialized in signage in the north of France. Then we have ATP, which is a consulting company specialized in the accessibility audits and project management for cities regarding accessibility for cities. Then we had Empreinte, which is a signage, urban signage manufacturer, also an old and very structured company. And last but not least, we integrated in the consortium Mangrove, which is, I would call them a social design agency, to bring expertise on user testing, on a social approach of a topic that they were not very involved in, but they bring their expertise in this project. So 8 companies to face a challenge. Just to give you an overview of the timeline of the project. So first we had, let's say, about 18 months of research and development. So the kickoff has been done in November 21. And we started to make different entities, and I will come back to it, but we created also a sensory committee with many stakeholders. And we had a big first round of user testing in April 2022 in a city live in Lyon, actually, which is 500 kilometers from the site for the Olympic Village, because it was full of building work. Impossible to do some user testing. It was full of trucks and people working on this location. So we created the same zone, a parcours, to make some user testing. And so we took different user profile, and we have done this first round. So then we took feedback from all those testings, and I will explain a bit more after that. And we made a second round of user testing on site this time in the Olympic Village. That was not far from the end of building work. So we made this second round, and after this sequence, we complete the design, and regarding all the learnings that we took from those 2 rounds and discussions that we had for during those 18 months, we defined the global solution, and then it was called the acquisition phase number 1. So it was to produce and implement a part of the concept in and around the Olympic Village for the Olympic Games that happened, as you know, in July to September 2024. And now we started the acquisition phase number 2 to produce and implement the solution in the Olympic Village that has been transformed now for a standard city. Something important is that we have the maintenance until 2027, just to be sure that everything is still working, and then we will give the keys to the local entities. So this is a long-term project, and what we loved from the beginning was not only to create some specific signage only for the Olympic Games, but the goal was really to develop this full concept for the inhabitants that will live in this area. So let me do a focus on the research and development phase. Maybe just before, as Valérie mentioned, we created a methodological guide regarding all the process that we've made. It's 86 pages. Everything is on this book, and from the beginning we said to our customers that it's important also for us to share it, to open the method, to open those information to any designer in the world that want to learn about a specific project and the way we have done this project. And yes, we'll be glad to share it with you. We are doing the translation now because it's obviously in French. So regarding this research and development phase, first we had a territorial analysis where we work on the way to understand this location, to understand the structural information of the location with the Seine River, with some very important, we have the Stade de France, so the biggest stadium in France, which is just on the other side of the river. And we had 4, let's say, strong streets. And then we work on the information hierarchy to say, okay, we have hubs, I would say, and we need to deploy a system regarding this hierarchy with C1, C2, C4, and for each point we had certain equipments regarding the size and the importance of this nodal point. We also thought about this, what we call the signage compass. We have the Seine River on one hand, Pleyel, which is a very important building in this zone, the city center of Saint-Denis, which is the municipality which is close by this location, and the city hall of Saint-Ouen. So we are between 3 cities, and we have those strong magnetic poles to create the location. So at the beginning of the project, directly we said, okay, we need to bring different profiles, experts, users, public entities, and we created a sensory committee, and their goal was to give us insight, challenges, bring people on the table when it's about working on user profiles. And so they enlarge our vision of the users to work with for the user testing phases. And from the beginning, we said, okay, we have different user profile as large as possible. And we have different senses. And as you all know, as designers and etc., unfortunately, today, 90% of the signage on cities, and I'm kind if I say 90% of the signage is only visual signage. So it's good on one hand, but it's an issue for many people. So we work on a multisensory mix, we said, so where we can deliver information in different modes, including tactile and what we call podo-tactile, so signage on the floor. And I will give you some examples here. And the second point that I wanted to mention here, that was, okay, we're going to deliver physical, let's say, accessibility with different equipments, maps, with signposts, etc. But from our point of view, a good wayfinding system today has to be phygital. So I mean, we need to bring data, to bring a digital system as a complement of the physical one, because let's say in terms of usage today, many of us use our smartphones in our today's mobility, outdoor, indoor, outdoor mainly with cars, but now it's moving step by step for indoor navigation in complex buildings. So that was a very important part of our vision for this digital and physical wayfinding system. And I will then explain what we've done regarding the digital part of this city of 52 hectares. So we worked on different equipments, from wooden signposts, orientation maps, voice information, audio information, and different equipments. So we made a first round of design. We work with different stakeholders on it, with the different constraints that we had. And one of our focus was on, let's say, the accessibility, of course, and the way that this wayfinding system is a full system. But what I wrote here as an example was that hybridation for the visual signage is not a good idea. So as you may see here, we have let's say the wooden signpost with classical, I would say, signage with directions that can be enlightened at night. And we also develop a concept of what we call linear maps. It's a bit inspired from the metro stations. But after doing some testing, we said we must not put this linear signage on the same pole as just the visual signage with directional information. This is an example. And another point I wanted to mention, it was from the very beginning also, we had to create a signage which is easy to maintain. So in the same vision that we wanted to give a legacy regarding the methodology of this project, we also said to the Solidéo at the beginning, okay, we're gonna give you all the technical principle, all the drawings. So tomorrow for maintenance, it's only modules. And if you want to buy it anywhere, you have all the tech information to do the maintenance, and you don't depend on us if you have any change to do. And that was an important part for us too. So here is an example of something that we let's say, we worked with different steps, and we made some testings, but the idea was quite simple. When you walk in a certain city, if you have a chance like you guys in the US, it's let's say orthogonal streets. So sometimes it's very good to have a very local information, very simple, with where you are, the names of the next streets, and the big directions that you can reach. And so we work on this concept of linear maps. And I have to say that, and you will see later in the real life, you can touch it, and if you press some of the names, some of the buttons, you have voice information also. So it's visual, tactile, and audio signage. On the same principle, we said, okay, everybody used to, let's say, to create a mental map to understand how the area is organized. So we work on table maps, which are also multisensory with visual, tactile, audio, etc. And I will come back to it later. Another part of the project was about the product tactile information. So I mean, it's the tactile walking surface indicators that you can find on the floor. We have in France a standard with warning stud and guiding pattern. It's the same that you can find in the ISO standard for tactile walking surface indicators. And we wanted to do some testing here to check if you designed a certain, let's say, if you make a different design on a warning stud, for example. So on one side, it's supposed to be very smooth, and on the other side of the warning stud, you have a kind of structure. Let's see if the user can feel the difference if you walk in a certain way. So, for example, if you arrive close to a crossing with a street with cars, if you have some structure on the stud that makes you stop naturally, I would say, will it work or not? So we made different patterns, we made some testings, and the learnings I can give you right now is that obviously a small pattern on a warning stud can't be detected from a user point of view. Another example that you can see here was in many cities now we avoid traffic lights, we avoid pedestrian information, but then the topic is how to reduce incidents between all those micro-mobility tools like bikes, etc. And the issue is that if you don't have a traffic light, an acoustic pedestrian signal, you just rely on your ears to know if someone is arriving. And on the opposite side, if you are just on a bike, sometimes you don't see that the user can't see you actually, and maybe he's going to cross whether you think that he will wait for you. So we made some testing with a flooring system on the bike lane. So you have some vibration when you are on the bike, which is a signal to say to the user, okay, warning, you have to reduce your speed. And on the same time, it was creating noise for visually impaired people to hear that something is coming. And with the sound and the vibration, you can easily locate the speed and the bike that is coming, for example. Another solution that we tried, it was a kind of carpet in the middle of the crossing. So you have texture to keep your direction, to be sure that you're going to reach the opposite side of the street. And we made it as a complement of audio signage, and I will come back to this part later. Working on the user testing, we work with all our consortium on different angles, I would say. And one of the angles that we took and it was inspired by the sensory committee, was to say, okay, in some scientific work regarding cognition and journeys in cities for users, there is a way to think about it regarding the way people are moving in cities. And this, let's say, work, this scientific approach says that you can define 4 user profile. One is called the spider. So the spider prepares its movement in advance and is comforted by the information. So this is people that will take a bit of time to prepare their journey. Sometimes they are anxious, so they will go to a website, take some information, use route planners, etc. Another profile is the mole. It can be easily disoriented, and so they will rely on human assistance a lot and tools, but for them mobility usually is quite a challenge, and he can find himself lost quite easily. And those people are part of the population who can face, for example, orientation disorders, where you have difficulties to have a 3D mentalization, I would say, of the urban spaces, lateralization, left, right, and so moving in complex environment, a known environment is complex for this kind of travelers. Then you have the dolphin. No preparation. I know how it works. I'm confident, and I will just use some tools, maps, signage. I go directly to my objective, and I will use the tools that I can find during my way. And then we have the fox, and to make it short, it's the people who are local, the people who knows. If you know the location, you come here quite regularly. You won't use the tools around you. You just walk and you just, let's say, use the signage and some tools when you have disruptive situation. Another tool that we use when we have done user testing was the wheel of emotions, and we used it a lot, and it's not it's very common, but it was important for us to help the users to express their emotions while they are testing some innovations, some tools, some equipments, and to understand how they feel about it, because a big part of the confidence of the way you use and you reach your destination rely on your emotional mode when you are on it. And 3 weeks ago, I was talking with a professor in a university in Italy, and she told me, I'm quite confident, but once I'm thinking I'm lost, once I'm starting to doubt about the way I'm on the right way, my anxiety goes very quickly high, and then I'm lost, and I'm like in a wheel, and I need human to help me. So it's very important to be able to express the emotion that you can feel during a journey. So with those 4 categories, we had different profiles, and so we included, let's say, visually impaired, deaf people, autistic persons, these profiles, odd people, some foreigners regarding the text and the visual signage, and local people that never came to this location, etc., etc. And during this research and development phase, for each user, we had 2 people. One that was in interaction with the user, explaining in interaction, talking with the people, asking them questions after testing, etc. And we had another people from the team just shadowing. And this is from the UX design experience. So one was in interaction, another one was just looking and taking notes on the reactions and what he can see more deeply, because he was not involved in the communication with the user. And so we gather a lot of information from those 2 rounds of user testing. And for each, we made journeys with, let's say, 14 different steps, 14 situations, 14 equipments, and each time we got feedback from users, and that's where we gather all the information. Here, I don't have enough time to give you, let's say, detailed information, because it's a huge job, but you will find many information in the guide we're going to share, and what we learned with those user testing. And that was just amazing to see all those people. And as you probably know, something that we had to face, like in any project, it's what we call the conflict of usage. I don't know exactly how to say it in English, but if you install some tactile walking surface, very detectable for visually impaired people, wheelchair people who won't like it, we learned that audio information on demand was very useful for many users, but some autistic person were about to run away once the voice came from a map, for example. The surprise that they had at this moment was very impressive. So we tried to work on the sound level and to put some jingles to prepare the people that, okay, sound will come, etc. So we had very a large variety of user feedback. So after the concept, we validated this global wayfinding system, and I will give you some examples. You've seen some SketchUp, and here is one of the map that we implemented, and so you can see it. We kept this compass ID on the left of the multisensory table, so you have the big directions regarding your location. Obviously, the map is oriented on the same side that you look at it, and one of the point I need to mention here is that when I talk about audio information, in France, we have a standard for a very long time that is at the beginning has been created for accessible pedestrian signals, so talking traffic light, I would say, and the system here is not push button that you need to find and to push. The push button actually is the remote control that is given for free to any users in the country, and with this little remote control, you can activate the sound coming from the traffic light. You can activate beacons to locate the entrance of building, of metro stations, railway stations. So it's really the audio signage that has been implemented widely. And only on our side, we implemented something like 300,000 equipments in the country. And obviously, those maps have an audio beacon inside. So it means if you are visually impaired and you have your remote control or a smartphone app today, and that you can automatic mode, it means when you will walk in the street, you have tactile studs and bars for the directional part. But when you will be about 10 meters away from the map, you will have the map giving you voice and saying, okay, multisensory map, push the button on the left down corner to have more information. And if you push this button when you reach the map, you will have a description of the map, you will have explanation about how it works, you will know that you have some buttons on it that will give you more information. And so it helps you to find these equipments. So as you can see, we had Braille, tactile information, legend, etc. And we design it really for most of the users. Here I have a video with the sound, but the sound is not working, but you can see it. and I will share it with pleasure. Here is an example of this linear map, linear cartography. Yes, I turn off the sound. So as I said, you can locate this with your remote control if you are visually impaired with it, or smartphone app, which is free. And so you can close to it, and then you can touch it. You can push some buttons to get different information. And this concept was very appreciated by many of the users, because it's quite simple to understand it, because you work in this very direction. And so you know that if you go straight ahead, you're going to find the river, etc. So it was a very simplified way to give information to many people. Here is an example of the audio beacons. As I said, if we have a pedestrian signals, there is voice inside. But if you don't have any information. So we install those the same wooden signpost, the same design, but no visual information, only an audio beacon giving information for visually impaired people. And this system is on demand, so it means you need to have a system to trigger it. But on the other hand, one of the big advantages is that, as you can see, there is flats and people living just at 5 meters from the sound. So it's a good use compromise between different people in this location. And because the two sides of the street are activated simultaneously, it helps you to reach the other side of the street with what we call a sound corridor. Here is some example of the signage with the modules that you can change easily. And this is the now this is the time to focus on the digital part of the system. So this slide is a bit not the best I've done, but let me just explain something. In our point of view, if you are talking about digital wayfinding, GPS, pedestrian GPS apps, usually it's not very accessible. There are progress, obviously, when it's about urban navigation, but one of the topic was how to collect the data, how to have the information regarding the elevation, if you can go there with a wheelchair or not, if you have stairs, if you have audio information. And we have a standard in France regarding some criteria that the cities have to collect to be able to provide an inclusive routing for GPS. And what we've done here, because one of the issue for cities is when they do the data collection, it's static. So it means you bring people, they walk in the street, they take information, but if you do building work 3 months later, it's not up to date. And what we've done is that, because it was a new area, the 52 hectares of Olympic Village and all this location was under a BIM or a SIM. So it's a building information management system or a map. And so we had a full digital map used by the constructions companies. And so what we've done, because they make every modification on this digital twin of the city. If they create a new path, if they build a new building, every information will be on the SIM. And so we made a bridge, a digital bridge between this tool that they are using and open data for route calculators with many information regarding inclusive mobility. So I'm not sure I'm very clear, but what we have made is to create an open data tool for this 52-hectare zone, where all the information are automatically updated from the cities when they do building work, street work. So any app, any route calculator can take those data and be sure that the route that I will give to any users will be accessible regarding his needs. Last point. So as I told you, we will share, and we will share the methodological legacy, our experience, what we've done, the protocol that we made for the user testing phases. And what we learned, I would say, if we can resume to main points, is the first point is obviously to bring multidisciplinary skills on the project, and that's what we've done with the consortium. And then we added many competencies with the sensory committee, because we do very often accessibility, inclusive projects for buildings, streets, but as many of us, okay, very often we are just on our team, we work with the customers, we have some focus groups, but it was very interesting to bring social designers, to bring different type of users, not just extreme users. And it was very, very interesting for the team. Start with an analysis of the area, its functions, the landmarks that you can find on the territory. So here we had the Seine, we had the stadium, we had the office, the city hall, metro station, and we use all those very important clues to create and to design the landmarks and the wayfinding system. Define the concept of orientation and all those points before starting the project. We made a big also benchmark of what we found in different projects, in different consulting projects and design in different countries, and we check innovations that has been deployed. But I will not detail all those, but also what we learn is that to do some testing not in the real life environment that we used to do sometimes. We take people user testing on a specific environment, which is not really the noisy environment, and in the real life, it was also a very important point. Plan the system, ensure information longevity also, and the maintenance, because as we all face different projects, you can define the best wayfinding, inclusive wayfinding system. The question of the maintenance is really key, because it makes no sense if 6 months after the installation, the information and the system is not maintained. And the last point we added is to have a measure of the impact of this system. So that's going to be a part that we will work during the next month, just to gather information on the impact of on different type of users. Yeah, here's another information. I will let you check it, and I will share my presentation here after the webcast. But this is a specific focus on the durability and the accuracy of the signage system, with what I said regarding the modules that can be easily changed and that the customer can buy it from anyone, to apply quality standards, to plan regular maintenance procedures, etc., etc. So this is the guide in French that we're gonna share once we have done the translation, and I try to be as quick as possible to make a short presentation about this long and important project for us. So yes, I'll be glad to now talk with you and share your thoughts, and that's it.
Sylvain, I am aghast at how much information you've shared. Really thrilled. I feel like we've just been through a really intense graduate session that should have gone on for a week. But you did it quite nicely in an hour, so thanks very much. We have questions from our audience. I'm going to start with one question because it's one of the questions that we get a lot. And it's because we are really sensitive to thinking about the incredible human diversity that we're trying to serve from inclusive solutions. And you clearly went down that road and did your best to really make that a reality of this R&D process and the implementation process. In terms of making it work across very different needs, where'd you end up? Were there challenges that were insurmountable? Were there things that, you remain waking up in the middle of the night thinking, how could I have done that better? In terms of those potential conflicts of what people need and want to be successful finding their way. Anything waking up in the middle of the night? Or are you done with that?
No, actually, we are still talking about what we've done, and we keep thinking about the way to improve it. And actually, that should be a permanent process to evaluate, design, test, and do some modification. But here we had this process. We had an obligation to deliver the system before the Olympic Games. Now we have an obligation to retrofit the city for the citizens that's going to be inhabitants of this location. So yes, it's going to be an ongoing process, and sometimes, as I said, we have those conflicts. For some, the sound is really a key point. We have noise adjustment regarding the sound and the noise around. But for some users, as I said, like autistic person, the sound was quite aggressive. So yes, it's always trying to find a compromise where you can reach your objectives in terms of orientation, in terms of the time for the user to take information. And that's where, with the multisensory maps, for example, we try to make something for a large part of users. But we all know that we can't make a 100% system, and that we can answer all the users' needs. But yeah, we keep thinking about it, and I think the digital part was the beginning, because once you can, and this is something that we tested with the Wayfinding app, the smartphone is a good way to adapt the UX and the UE for the abilities and the preferences of the user. So we made some testing with the Wayfinding app, with voice, with different, let's say, settings. And when the app activates a physical device or give you some clues, and when you have this phygital approach, it brings a very high value, because the smartphone has the capacity to know, let's say, your needs. So it's a good way, but not all the users can use a smartphone when they are moving in a city.
Well, we appreciate the seriousness with which you've done this, and know that it's never perfect, but you keep working at it. There's no nirvana at the end. People have very detailed questions, and we've got lots of them. So I'm going to start asking you those questions. And apologies to everyone if I don't get to all of these, but some very specific questions. This is from Amanda Bailey. is the audio connected on batteries, or is there electrical wiring below ground to each sign or map? Is it Bluetooth?
Okay, so it's powered by the city. So all the audio equipment, and this is something that was important because, as I told you, the whole 52 hectares has been rebuilt completely. So we had to work with all the engineers and the companies to say, okay, we need this exact position to get power. And it was quite a fight because sometimes they said, okay, it's better 2, 3, 4, 5 meters away, but we don't care. And we said, no, we need exactly to this very location. So yes, the electrical part is connected to the city lights, and how to trigger it. It's triggered with the remote control, which is this French radio frequency standard, and through the smartphones is through Bluetooth. And so we had also this capacity to embed different languages in an app to trigger the system through Bluetooth.
Okay, thank you. I know that this woman, Ruth O'Reilly, is asking a question that many of us want to hear more about, and that is that issue of the bike lane and the pedestrian passage across. And you talked about using tactile information to create not only information that cyclists are approaching a pedestrian crossing, but also gives pedestrians tactile information. It generates audible information about bikes approaching. Tell us more. What, do you feel like you've got an answer that we should be replicating? Is this working? How's the data?
Actually, it's connected to the question before. I think the concept is good. I think we touched something that is quite interesting in terms of usage. I mean, yes, a bike, and if you have those let's say stuff on the floor, naturally you will break a little. And on the other side, the sound, and we tested with different materials to help people to hear the sound coming from this bike lane. Frankly speaking, then it's a question of standards, on legislation, on testing. And here, I think we need more time. We need to try different designs, different materials. So I think we touched something very interesting, but we need to work longer and to do other testing because many bike users said, oh, it's just horrible, this stuff, and we don't want any of them implemented in the city. But that's where we have to find a compromise, just to not break the wheels of the bikes after 2 months. But there is something to do here.
Okay.
But we haven't found that.
All right. We appreciate
frankly
your
speaking.
candor. Okay. We don't have an absolute answer, but we know that this is in play. Our colleague, Dr. Nat Hosono in Tokyo, always keeps us attuned to a critical human need. Was there a method of including information about proximate toilet availability in the wayfinding system?
Public toilets, we have some public toilets in the zone, but it's mostly, let's say, public buildings that can bring this service. And so the public toilets are first located in the data, open data set I was talking about. So yes, you have the location of the toilets. And you can, let me just remind me. So we have it technically, but not on the signage itself. And that is something that we haven't, we had not real feedback from user. I will check. let me check.
Okay, thank you, thank you. We are all concerned about toilets around here. My friend Gerald Craddock in Dublin is asking a question again about this this intersection of pedestrians and cycle lanes, bicycle lanes. And we are all dealing with this simultaneously. But Gerald is bringing up a critically important issue, which is the world of bicycle lanes has changed fundamentally in a very short period of time to having vehicles that are electric and going very, very quickly. So talking about e-bikes and talking about, it's e-scooters, e-bikes, things that are both very fast and very heavy. Was that part of the testing that you did? That really
yes,
fast option?
Yeah, that was part of the testing, and something that we worked in quickly, but it was not one of the options that has been kept by the Solidéo and the customer. But this is something that we implemented in other cities now. Is, as you understood, visually impaired people can use a remote control or a smartphone app to activate some equipments. And when it's about here crossings without any pedestrian signals, we developed this system where when the user arrives close to the intersection, he activates the system automatically or just on demand. And then you're going to have a voice information and a light. And so you have this kind of light system for the bikes, the e-bikes, etc., saying, okay, oh, I have a flash, I can see a light, so maybe something is happening. You have a visual signage with a warning. And so it will give the information for all those bike and e-bike users that just there is something to be careful. And then you have the user with your white stick or guide dog that can cross the street, because on those areas, the pedestrian has the priority to cross the street, and any bike's car has to stop when someone starts walking. So this is something that is now starting to be tested, and the user feedback and the city where we implemented such a solution are quite good. We try to add a solar panel, so you don't have any power to bring from the city. And so this is a quite simple system to reduce accidents with all those micro mobility solutions.
I think we're going to want to stay very close to the continuing exploration and research on this, because everyone is dealing with the same reality. So thank you. One of the questions is from our friends and clients at our state parks agency, the Universal Access Program, and asking about different variations in people's smartphone capacity. Because as we get closer to Bluetooth being an answer to a lot of inclusive solutions, was this an issue for you in Paris? A different level of personal smartphone capacity, the sophistication of the smartphone?
I would say the first point is, if a user has a smartphone and is able to use it, and he is able to use it in a mobility position while he's walking, from this starting point, it means you have many users that are outside of this, let's say, of this hypothesis, because many people can't use a smartphone or just use it in a very quiet place at home, easy. But when it's about mobility, it's in terms of cognition quite difficult. But once you have people that use a smartphone, then it's a UX and UI job. I mean, your job as a designer and your UX and UI designer for apps and for digital solution is to create the shortest learning time, I would say, to make it as intuitive as possible. What we've done, for example, is that when you start the system, we will detect, for example, if you use a screen reader, voice over, talkback, so you don't have to say or to do settings. I'm using a screen reader, or I'm using a magnifier, or okay, we detect the settings of the user, so we can directly give them the UI that they need. So the time to appropriate and to start using such an app or such a system can be very short. And just to give you a testimony, we made user testing for such a solution in the Metro of Paris, and the RATP, so the company that manages for the Metro, they bring users to do the testing. They were managing for the user testing panel, and when we started doing this user testing, we had a very old people, maybe 75 years old. He was one of the representative of the senior people in the Paris region, one of the bigger association. And he arrived, he said, okay, I've been invited by the RATP, but I don't know exactly what I'm doing here. And so I said to him, okay, you are here to test a wayfinding app, an inclusive wayfinding app on your smartphone. He said, I don't have a smartphone, so how will I do? So I said, okay, give me your phone. And actually it was an Android phone, so it was a smartphone. And I said, okay, I just installed the app, and then let's see how you use it. And because he started the app, he said, okay, I want to go to the platform in directions of Paris Center. He clicked, and then he had a voice information. He had some arrows, and he started walking, and very quickly he used it, and he made 3 journeys from the platform, then to a bus stop outside, etc. And when we made the feedback with the RATP and all the users, he said, okay, first, I didn't know, but I have a smartphone. Good. Secondly, in a metro station, I don't hear the public announcement. I can't read the signage because I'm low vision, I don't see very well. I'm not considered as a visually impaired person, but I don't see it. I'm very quickly stressed. But here, I just follow the voice, I just check my environment, and I reach my destination very easily. So yes, please accelerate such solution for the Metro of Paris. So once again, I'm not saying that it's easy and everybody can use it, and but I'm just, I think, giving an example where if you do a good design and user experience and not on the tech side, with little time, because like any innovation, any product, any solution, any app, you need a little time to get used to it. But it can be really helpful as a complement of the whole signage.
Thank you. Sylvain, this is a question that I think probably many people are also mulling over. And this is from Francisco Lasta, and he's asking, what were the biggest challenges you encountered in educating decision makers about the importance of inclusive wayfinding? And how did you effectively advocate for allocating the necessary budget to prioritize these design elements?
Long question. Yes, actually, that was something easy at the beginning, because this advocacy job was done previously, and one of the decision makers in the Solidéo Paris 2024 was one of the experts in a consultancy company, and so I think this entity has directly as one of the pillar in their strategy to have this universal accessibility vision, and they had budgets. So in this very specific case, we work closely with our customer to do it. But obviously, on our stakeholders, we had our customers, but we had Paris 2024, we had the cities, we had the architects and the urban planner. We had many stakeholders, and we had to fight. We had to fight with many of them. And one of the key points was it's going to be useful for many users. Many people arriving on the table at the beginning, they were obliged to, from the cities, for example, and saying, okay, we don't have so many blind persons here, so we don't really need it, and it's going to be a real question for the maintenance, etc. But once he understood this job, which is a question of inclusion, designing solution for all and not for a specific type of user, they started to think differently. And one of the challenges that we had, to be honest, with the Paris 2024 is that during the Olympic Games, the Olympic Village was completely closed. And they had a big project, let's say a big part of for the Paralympics, to have one human assistance, and they were privileging the human assistance. So they didn't want actually to have very independent people. They like to have people that help people to reach their destination, so they always know where all the para athletes are, for example. But I think one of the key points is, okay, as we all know, universal design is good for all, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. I do want to make a point that the London Olympics of 2012 really raised the bar on inclusive design, and we've done a lot of talking and celebrating and visiting the site of what is now the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. And I just want to give a shout out to that process, because it was something that the mayors in sequence, people who agreed on nothing, agreed on this. And that made an enormous difference. And it is partly reflected in how aspects of the park still thrive today. It was a much bigger space than you had in Paris. One of the things that I think is interesting, and it's, can you talk about the decision to have the linear map and directional arrows on separate signposts? That, for anybody who's a designer in the audience, that's a really interesting moment of decision. Tell us more about that.
Can you just?
It was talking about the standard signage, street signage, and having the linear panel. Originally, you thought that you could put them together, and you changed your mind. Explain that process a little bit.
I think that was part of the first user testing round, where we created some poles with this linear map and with the directional signage traditional. And from the shadowing and the designer that was doing this shadowing and just looking at the way that people are using it, it was creating a mix between I go close to the equipment, I touch it, I just look at it at 50 centimeters or 1 meter, and then I go back, look at it on the top, but it was redundant, I said. So we saw, and we do on the second round testing, to separate those poles with the linear map and the arrows with the big directional. And that's where we've seen that it was more efficient to separate, because one usage is to come close, another one is just to have a look at it. And the location of the poles also were different. One is more on the path, the other one can be not exactly on the path, or just to have those visual clues. But it was part of the learnings that we made. So it was really made by shadowing.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Let me just see, I think Unfortunately, I've got questions in two different categories. We've got them in Q&A and in chat. So let me just check. Actually, an interesting question from another colleague, Kay Bell, an activist at the municipal level. All these methods and equipments require a large budget. And clearly, you had a large budget, but where did you get the most support? Who was your champion in the complex governmental structure of running the Olympics? Was there somebody who made sure that you could pull this off? Did you have an ally in that group?
Yeah, actually, the general manager of the Solidéo was very involved, and he paid attention to respect the pillars they defined regarding the environmental impact of the projects and regarding this universal accessibility challenge and the objective that they wanted to reach. So during certain, let's say, at certain moments, we had to struggle a little bit, especially with Paris 2024. And we were, our main contact was the universal access manager. They had a person in charge of this project and for the Olympic Village, but he was also managing other locations in Paris. And at a certain point, we have to struggle a little bit. And the good sign was that this general manager came when it was needed, just to say, guys, it's my job. I've been, let's say, the Solidéo has been created from the government, from the Paris region, from Paris City, from Paris 2024. And we all said, this is one of our objectives, this is one of our goals. So we need to do it. So just do it. And it's my obligation to do it. So we have to move forward. And sometimes we had some fight, but it was a great allies.
Another technical question, Sylvain. Many of the blind users that this fellow, Nick Ross, is asking this question. Many of the blind users I've tested wayfinding and navigation apps with also cite that many of the existing apps are a significant battery drain. Many rely on interpreted video calls. Many people here, it's very common in the US, rely on that. All require internet connection, which can be lost or spotty in many indoor and outdoor environments. It's another good argument to always include physical accessible wayfinding elements too, and not only rely on wayfinding, which of course is your fidgetal, your word that you created that actually makes the two of them married together. Talk a bit about that. Because this battery thing is always an issue.
Yes, two things, and this is a topic that I know quite well. Yes, there is different technologies to, let's say, to provide a good user navigation experience when it's about vision impaired people. One of the main that are used, as your attendee said, it's to use the camera. So it uses camera. So it needs a high level of connection between a server and to do some requests, and your camera is trying to find a correspondence, I would say, between the digital model and the real. And here, yes, it's very consuming. And what we've seen from different testing that we've made with a camera-based navigation system is that it's 1% per minute. So yes, it's very demanding regarding battery. Your telephone is warming, and a system that we used doesn't require camera, just rely on a mix between Bluetooth, and what we started to use is just inertial navigation. So we just rely on the sensors of the smartphone, gyroscope, accelerometer, compass, barometer also. And here you don't have any issue regarding the battery level. and you don't need any data, because this is something also that we checked. If you have people coming from a very, let's say, from countries where you don't want to activate a data license, that will be very expensive. So yes, we made some testing with, let's say, plain mode, no data required, no camera to be used, just turn by turn voice information. And we improved the accuracy of the GPS, which is quite bad in cities, let's say 10, 15 meters, with this inertial navigation mode.
Thank you. That is a sensitive answer to a complicated problem that's not going to go away tomorrow. A question on the tactile maps from Peter. I'd like to ask you about the tactile maps. They look great, by the way. And many of the single maps you prepared, how did you ensure that the maintenance of them would ensure that they'd be used long term? Because clearly those could be very vulnerable. How'd that happen?
Excellent question. We used to create multisensory map indoor, which is not an issue, but also outdoor in different countries. We installed some of them in Saudi Arabia, in the north of Europe, etc., etc. Here, once again, it's a question of discussion with the customer and with the location of the map outdoor. And here, in the project that we made, we have an issue. And I will just give you an example. We made almost the same type of map in Belgium, in a certain location, with each very quiet. There is no, no issue with the local population, etc. And I think the map is outside for the last 5 years. Of course, it's dirty because of the rain, the sand, etc. But we had no violence against the map. As I told you at the beginning, this zone is a suburb of Paris, and it's a, let's say, sensitive, I would say, zone. And so, yes, we had after 3 days some people coming and trying to break it, etc. So that's where we are working with the customer for the next step. As I said, we are working on the la phase héritage, comme on dit, for the legacy and the population that will live here. And we are thinking about changing the materials and to provide something which is really stronger in metal. Because the location, it's not a problem of materials. It's a question of the location of the map, the population that are close to it, and the material that we use. So what I mean is that in some location that was perfect, but now we have to change it. And yes, for this specific location, we will do some modification regarding the durability of the map and the maintenance.
Thank you. A question of a detail, and it's something that many of us who have done work in this area, audio pedestrian signals being one of those areas, proximity to residential buildings of audio information. Was that an issue in Paris?
Actually, it's a topic. And I know that in the US, you have the push button, the locator tone. So you have, because you ask visually impaired people to find a box in the city, you need to add a locator tone to help them to find it and then to push it, to have a sound, etc. So the choice that we made in France, and this is something that came from our company 30 years ago, and now it's an obligation and a standard, is to have this on-demand triggering audio system. And so the first point is that there is no permanent sound. So this is the first part of the answer. So it's just when user needs this type of information that the voice will be streamed. The second part is we have different settings on those equipments with an ambient noise adjustment. So we can define on the settings a minimum volume, maximum volume, and a real-time volume adjustment. And we also have night settings and day settings. So from 10 p.m., the maximum volume is lower, up to, I think, 8 a.m. So yes, those equipments need to have different settings, and you need to have people that are aware of the let's say the setting system to adapt the volumes and the maximum and this noise adjustment system regarding what is around this audio system.
Thank you, Sylvain. One more question, and that has to do with the length of the project and where you are today in terms of additional time to continue the maintenance and refinement and protection of the system that you've created. How much time and how much do you have left to be able to continue to do this work?
So as I said, we made this research and development phase. Then we made some implementation in the area, and we also do some implementation above the zone that was originally in the Olympic Village, because the city said, okay, we need to have this continuous system on our city. So we enlarged actually the implementation in the first step. And then we had the Olympic Games. And we had this very specific use of the zone that was closed with athletes, para-athletes, etc. And so the Solidéo gave the keys on time to Paris 2024 in May. And everybody was worried about the deadline and the time, but Solidéo delivered all the project on time. So they gave the key of all the locations in Paris to Paris 2024. And let's say the 1st of October, 2 months ago, the Paris 2024 gave back the keys to Solidéo. And now we are working on modifying, I would say, all those locations for the real life next steps, héritage, comme on dit en français, in French. And so now we have a planning in Q1 and Q2 2025 to add some equipments in the center of the Olympic Village and in some locations that were not needed before the Olympic Games. And then we have 2 years of maintenance, and we have 2 years to maintain and to do some training for the city, the cities that will be in charge of the maintenance after 2027. So that was something very good, I would say, from our point of view. The duration of the project with this first step, research and development, a first implementation, waiting, now a second cycle of implementation. That's where we also gonna do some feedback and some impact feedback, and then we have a bit of years to see how it's evolving. And this is very unique for us to have such a length to analyze what we've done and to have feedback, actually.
Very exciting. Those of us who have not been to the site yet wanted the chance to go, so glad that the work continues and that we should have a great experience when we go. Sylvain, I can't thank you enough. As always, you are extraordinarily generous, and I think everyone is going to be very pleased. Those who don't read French, it is already available in French. I've actually had automatic translation. You made the translation into Japanese for me, but we also know that we'll have an actual translation, not automatic, by the end of the week. So 1,000 thanks to you, sir. We are all in your debt. Wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and feel free to come back to us. We'll be glad to share once again our insight, our learnings, and yes, see you soon, and maybe see you in Paris to make a visit of this Olympic village.
À bientôt,
Thank you.
Sylvain.
À bientôt. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup.